Stop what you're doing. Put down your coffee. Close every single financial news tab you have open right now, because what I am about to tell you is going to completely rewrite everything you think you know about the silver and gold market. Today, Sunday, February 15th, 2026, we are standing at the edge of the single most important moment in the history of precious metals trading. Not in decades, not in a generation, in the entire recorded history of commodity markets. And the mainstream financial media, every single analyst, every single expert parading across your television screen, they are either completely blind to what is happening, or they are deliberately lying to your face. I am going to expose both. Because today, we are going to talk about a number, one number, 8670. And by the time I am done, you will understand why this number is not just a price. It is a death sentence for the Western banking cartel's 4-decade-long scheme to suppress silver, turn off the noise. Because the noise is the weapon. Every time silver begins to move, every time the physical shortage becomes too obvious to deny, every time the industrial demand overwhelms the paper supply, an analyst from a major bullion bank appears on television. They sit in their expensive suits, they smile into the camera, and they point to a chart. A beautiful, massive chart showing hundreds of millions of ounces sitting in exchange vaults. And they say, with complete confidence, there is no shortage, the market is healthy, the vaults are full. And the retail investor, the small stackers, the family savers, the pension fund managers, they look at that enormous bar on the chart and they feel fear. They think 300 million ounces. That is an ocean of metal. A squeeze is impossible. The bulls are delusional. That is precisely what the cartel wants you to think. They are banking, literally banking, on your ignorance. They are praying every single day that you do not read the fine print, that you do not look behind the curtain, that you accept the headline number without asking the single most important question in precious metals investing. What kind of silver is that? Because here's the truth that will shatter your understanding of this market forever. That 300 million ounce figure, that massive, intimidating, confidence-destroying number, is a statistical fabrication. It is a mathematical sleight of hand. It is an accounting trick that combines two completely different categories of silver and presents them to you as one single unified inventory. And the moment you understand the difference between these two categories, the entire illusion collapses. There are two types of silver sitting inside the COMEX vaulting system. The first is called registered silver. The second is called eligible silver. And I need you to understand that legally, financially, practically, and structurally, these two categories might as well exist on completely different planets. Let us start with registered silver, because this is the only number that actually matters when we talk about price discovery, delivery obligations, and the solvency of the exchange. Registered silver is the metal that has a warrant attached to it. Think of a warrant as a title deed, like the title to your house or the registration document for your car. When silver has a warrant, it means the exchange has formally certified that this specific metal, in this specific vault, in this specific quantity, is fully available for delivery. It is sitting on the shelf. It is ready to be loaded onto a truck. Any futures contract holder who steps forward and demands physical delivery has a legal right to that metal. This is the store inventory. This is the bread on the supermarket shelf. This is the actual supply that backs the trillions of dollars worth of paper contracts trading on the exchange every single day. And right now, as I speak to you on February 15th, 2026, that pile is collapsing. We are watching the registered category drain, day by day, week by week, delivery cycle by delivery cycle. The numbers are not just declining. They are approaching levels that market veterans are describing as critically, dangerously, historically low. We are talking about less than 100 million ounces remaining in the registered category. And when you convert that figure into real industrial time, when you measure it against global industrial demand, that number represents less than 3 weeks of consumption. 3 weeks. That is the entire buffer between the functioning of the global silver market and a catastrophic, cascading, systemic default. 3 weeks of runway. And that runway is shrinking every single day. Now let us talk about the big lie. Let us talk about eligible silver. Eligible silver is the massive mountain of metal that makes the total inventory chart look healthy, abundant, and completely fine. It is the number that the analysts wave in your face. It is the bar on the chart that keeps retail investors from panicking and buying physical metal. It is the psychological weapon that the short sellers deploy every single time silver threatens to break out. But here's the secret that every single major bank, every single mainstream financial media outlet, and every single hired analyst refuses to tell you. Eligible silver does not belong to the COMEX. It does not belong to the bullion banks. It does not belong to the short sellers. Eligible simply means that the silver stored in a COMEX-approved vault meets the exchange's technical purity standards. It is a 1,000 ounce bar, 99.9% fine, sitting in a certified, insured, regulated facility. That is the entire definition. That is all eligible means. The metal itself is owned by private individuals. It is owned by family offices managing generational wealth. It is owned by institutional hedge funds running long-term commodity strategies. It is owned by wealthy private stackers who simply chose to use a COMEX vault because it offers world-class security, comprehensive insurance, and full regulatory oversight. These people are not trading. They are storing. Their silver is not for sale at any price the market is currently offering. It is private property, locked away in strong hands with zero intention of moving. Think about this analogy very carefully, because it is the most important concept in this entire presentation. Imagine a giant parking garage in Midtown Manhattan. You drive your car in, pay the monthly fee, and park in spot 4A. The garage manager records that a car exists in spot 4A. He has it in his inventory system. He knows the make, the model, the color, the license plate. Now I ask you, does the garage manager own your car? Can he sell your car to pay off his personal debts? Can he lend your car to someone else because they need a ride? Can he strip it for parts because the scrap metal price is attractive this week? No, that is called theft. That is called grand larceny. That is a criminal offense that would result in immediate arrest, prosecution, and imprisonment. The exact same law, the exact same fundamental principle of property rights, applies to eligible silver sitting in a COMEX vault. Just because the metal is sitting in that building does not mean JP Morgan can touch it. Just because it appears on a chart does not mean Citibank can use it to cover a naked short position. If any bullion bank attempted to seize eligible silver to settle a delivery demand, it would constitute the single greatest act of organized financial theft in modern history. The lawsuits would be instantaneous. The criminal indictments would follow within hours. And the trust in the entire global financial system, the trust that took centuries to build, would evaporate before the sun set on that day. The COMEX itself would cease to exist as a functioning institution before the week was out. No entity, no sovereign wealth fund, no central bank, no industrial buyer anywhere on earth would ever store a single ounce of gold or silver in New York again. So when you see that chart showing 300 million ounces in the vault, when the media flashes that massive number to terrify you into selling your position, understand exactly what they are doing. They are counting your car in their parking inventory. They are counting metal that has no warrant. They are counting metal that is not for sale. They are counting metal that is legally and permanently locked away by private owners who have absolutely zero intention of selling at these prices. The real float, the actual deliverable warrant-backed silver available to cover the millions of paper contracts outstanding on the exchange, is a tiny, tiny fraction of that headline number. And that fraction is running on fumes. Now, the fearmongers will try to use another weapon against you. When the registered numbers become impossible to hide, when the delivery demands pile up faster than the metal can be sourced, when the math becomes undeniable even to the most casual observer, the cartel has one final escape hatch they love to whisper about in comment sections and financial forums. They call it force majeure. You will see this phrase everywhere in the coming days. People will type it with absolute confidence, as if it settles the argument permanently. Oh, it doesn't matter if they run out of silver. They will simply declare force majeure, cancel all the contracts, settle everything in cash, and walk away clean. This argument sounds sophisticated. It sounds legally informed. It sounds like someone who has done their homework. It is completely, categorically, legally dead wrong. And I am going to explain exactly why. Because understanding force majeure is understanding why the short sellers are permanently, inescapably trapped. It is understanding why there's no exit door. It is understanding why the squeeze, when it comes, will not last days. It will last months. Force majeure is a genuine legal clause. It exists in contracts across every industry on earth: construction, shipping, agriculture, energy. And it serves a legitimate purpose. It is designed to protect both parties in a contract from liability when something truly extraordinary, truly unforeseeable, truly beyond all human control makes performance impossible. We are talking about acts of God, literal, catastrophic, civilization-disrupting events. If an earthquake swallows Lower Manhattan and the COMEX vault physically falls into the Hudson River, that is force majeure. If a nuclear exchange vaporizes the eastern seaboard and no vault physically exists anymore, that is force majeure. If the United States government passes emergency legislation confiscating all privately held precious metals, similar to Executive Order 6102 in 1933, that is force majeure. These are events that no human being could have predicted, planned for, or prevented. Events so extreme that holding either party liable for non-performance would be fundamentally unjust. But do you know what is absolutely, definitively, 100% not force majeure? Stupidity, greed, recklessness, commercial negligence, a business strategy that failed. Selling 500 paper ounces of silver for every single physical ounce you actually hold in your vault. That is not an act of God. That is an act of institutional recklessness, so extreme it borders on criminal fraud. And when that strategy implodes because the market finally demands a delivery on those paper promises, you do not get to declare force majeure. You do not get to walk away. You do not get to cancel contracts and mail checks. Imagine a bullion bank walking into a courtroom in the Southern District of New York. Imagine their lawyer standing before a federal judge and saying with a straight face, "Your Honor, we need to declare force majeure on our silver delivery obligations because we sold far too many paper contracts. The price moved against us dramatically, and we simply cannot source the physical metal at a price that doesn't destroy our balance sheet." The judge would not just dismiss the case. The judge would laugh them out of the building. And then the judge would likely refer the matter to the Department of Justice for investigation into why these contracts were sold in the first place without adequate physical backing. Insolvency is not force majeure. Over-leverage is not force majeure. Getting caught naked, short in a physical commodity with genuine industrial demand is not force majeure. The legal standard is crystal clear. If you cannot deliver the silver you contracted to deliver, you do not get to simply walk away. You are legally required to enter the open market at whatever price the market is asking and purchase the metal necessary to fulfill your obligations. You must find the silver. You must source it. You must pay whatever price the market demands, $75, $100, $150, $200, and you must deliver it to the contract holder. No exit, no escape, no force majeure, no cash settlement without the explicit voluntary consent of the contract holder. And this is precisely where the trap closes. The short sellers are cornered from every direction simultaneously. They cannot touch the eligible silver because it is private property and seizing it is theft. They cannot declare force majeure because their situation is self-inflicted commercial negligence, not an act of God. They cannot walk away from delivery demands because the courts will not allow it. So what is the only option remaining? What is the single pathway left open to them? They have to go directly to the private owners of that eligible silver. They have to pick up the phone and call the hedge funds, the family offices, the wealthy stackers, the people parking their cars in the garage, and they have to make them an offer. Picture this scenario. You own 10,000 ounces of silver sitting in the eligible category of a COMEX-approved vault. The spot price on the screen in New York is showing $75 per ounce. Your phone rings. It is a representative from one of the largest bullion banks on earth. "Sir," they say, with practiced calmness, "we need your silver. Would you be willing to sell at spot price?" You think about your position. You think about inflation running hot. You think about the geopolitical instability in the Middle East. You think about the manufacturing crisis unfolding across Asia. You think about everything you understand about the physical market. And you say, "No, I'm holding for the long term. I'm not selling at $75. There's a pause on the other end of the line. When the banker speaks again, the calmness has a slight edge to it. "We understand your position. Would you consider $85? "No," you say again. "Look at the Shanghai price. Look at the arbitrage gap. Look at what industrial buyers in Shenzhen are paying. $85 doesn't reflect physical reality." Another pause, longer this time. You can almost hear the spreadsheets being recalculated on the other end. $100. "Getting warmer," you say. "But I want you to explain to me why I should sell you my silver at $100 when the largest industrial market on earth is pricing it at $86.70 and the Shenzhen physical market is in complete chaos, when defaults are happening in real time, when police are involved, when supply chains are seizing up. Give me one good reason why $100 is fair." The banker's voice changes completely now. The professional composure is gone. What replaces it is something you have never heard from a banker before: desperation. "Sir, we are prepared to pay $150. We need those bars. We need them this week, before the February 27th delivery window." And that, right there, is the squeeze. That is the mechanism. That is how silver moves from $75 to $150, not over months of gradual trading, but overnight. Not because of algorithm-driven momentum, not because of retail sentiment shifting, but because of pure, raw physical panic bidding from institutions that sold metal they never had and are now legally required to find it at any cost. The eligible silver owners hold all the cards. They hold the leverage. Every day they refuse to sell at current prices, the pressure on the short side builds higher. Every delivery demand that comes in pushes the desperation further. And the holders, the strong hands, they know exactly what they are sitting on. They are not selling until the price reflects the true physical reality of this market. And the true physical reality of this market, the reality that the mainstream media refuses to acknowledge, that the bank analysts are paid to obscure, that the COMEX inventory charts are specifically designed to hide, is being broadcast in real time from a city most Western investors have never thought about: Shanghai, while the lawyers in New York are splitting hairs over definitions of registered and eligible inventory. while the bank analysts are crafting their next television appearance to reassure retail investors that everything is perfectly fine, while the COMEX is flashing its fraudulent headline number to keep the small investor paralyzed with false confidence, the real world has already moved on. The real world has stopped listening to New York. The real world has stopped watching London. The real world is looking east, and what it sees in the east is a number so mathematically violent, so structurally explosive, so fundamentally incompatible with the paper price being displayed on Western trading terminals that it should have shattered every computer screen on Wall Street the moment it printed. $86.70. Let that number sit with you for a moment. Do not rush past it. Do not treat it as just another data point in a sea of financial noise, because this number, $86.70, is not simply a closing price on a foreign exchange. It is a weapon. It is a line drawn in the sand by the largest industrial economy on Earth. And it effectively destroys the Western banking cartel's 4-decade-long ability to manipulate the silver market downward. Here is what happened. On Friday afternoon, just before the closing bell rang across Chinese trading floors, the Shanghai Futures Exchange sent a message to the Western financial system that was so loud, so clear, so mathematically undeniable that it should have been the only story on every financial news network on Earth this weekend. The Shanghai silver contract closed the week up 5.6%. Not 0.5%, not 1.2%, 5.6% in a single week. And when you strip away the exchange rate fluctuations, when you convert that closing price into US dollar terms and hold it next to the New York spot price, you get a number that will haunt the dreams of every naked short seller operating in the Western market for the next 10 days. $86.70 in Shanghai, $75 in New York. An arbitrage gap of nearly $12 per ounce. Now I need you to understand what an arbitrage gap of $12 means in a normally functioning global commodity market. In any healthy, efficient, properly connected international market, a price discrepancy of this magnitude between two major exchanges trading the same physical commodity would last for milliseconds. Literally milliseconds. High-frequency trading algorithms would detect the gap instantaneously. They would buy silver contracts in New York at $75, simultaneously arrange delivery in Shanghai at $86, pocket the $11 difference, and execute this trade thousands of times per second until the two prices converged into alignment. This is called arbitrage. It is the fundamental mechanism that keeps global commodity markets honest. It is the automatic correction system that prevents persistent price gaps from existing between connected markets. But here is the fact that breaks every assumption of modern financial theory. The gap is not closing. It is getting wider. Week after week, the Shanghai price climbs higher. Week after week, the New York paper price gets hammered down by waves of synthetic selling. And the gap between them, the yawning, gaping, structurally impossible chasm between the physical price in the East and the paper price in the West, grows larger with every passing trading session. Why? Well, why is the arbitrage mechanism broken? Why are the algorithms not correcting this? Because you cannot get the metal out of New York. The arbitrage requires physical delivery. To capture the $12 spread, a trader must buy silver in New York and physically ship it to Shanghai. But the registered inventory in New York is so critically depleted, the delivery queues are so backed up, the logistics of actually moving physical silver from COMEX vaults to Shanghai warehouses are so complex and time-consuming that the trade cannot be executed fast enough to close the gap. The cheap silver in the West is an illusion. It is paper. It is a digital entry in a database. It is a promise with no physical metal standing behind it. You cannot put a paper contract on a cargo ship. You cannot fly a futures position to Pudong International Airport. You cannot deliver a synthetic short position to an industrial buyer in Shenzhen who needs physical bars to manufacture solar panels this week. The expensive silver in the East is the reality. It is real metal, changing hands between real industrial buyers who need it for real manufacturing processes that power the real economy. Solar panels, electric vehicle batteries, medical imaging equipment, semiconductor fabrication, defense electronics. The industries that are physically building the future of human civilization run on silver, and they are paying $86.70 to get it. And this specific price, $86.70, is not random. It is not simply where supply and demand happen to clear on Friday afternoon. It is a signal. It is China's parting gift to the Western financial system before the dragon goes to sleep for the Lunar New Year holiday. Because starting this Monday, China goes dark. The Shanghai Futures Exchange closes its doors. The largest single pool of physical silver demand on Earth goes offline for the holiday week. There will be zero volume coming out of Asia, zero price discovery from the world's most honest commodity market, zero pressure from the buyers who actually use the metal. And historically, with mathematical, documented, repeatable consistency, this is the exact moment that the Western bullion banks choose to execute their dirtiest operations. They love the holiday period. They love thin liquidity. They love the absence of Asian buying pressure. Because when the biggest buyer in the room steps out, the paper sellers can move prices with far less resistance. They can dump billions of dollars worth of synthetic short contracts onto the market in a matter of minutes, driving the paper price down dramatically without triggering the massive physical buying response that would normally absorb and neutralize the attack. Right now, as I speak to you, the trading desks at the major bullion banks are not closed for the weekend. They are working. They are running scenarios. They are building attack strategies. They are almost certainly planning to flood the COMEX with paper contracts next week. Billions of dollars of synthetic silver that does not exist, has never existed, and will never exist in physical form. Specifically designed to drive the New York paper price down to $60, possibly even $50. They want to paint the chart red during the holiday. They want to trigger stop-loss orders. They want to force leverage longs into liquidation. They want to break the psychological momentum that has been building in the silver market for months. They want to create the visual impression of a market in collapse, so that when the retail investor logs into their account on Tuesday morning and sees silver trading at $55, they panic. They sell. They walk away from their position convinced that the squeeze narrative was wrong, that the silver bulls were delusional, that the banks were right all along. This is the holiday smackdown. And it has worked before, but this time, this particular holiday, this specific week, the banks have a problem they have never faced before, a $12 problem, because the Shanghai price is frozen. It is locked at 86.70. It is sitting there, immovable, like a concrete pillar driven deep into the foundation of the global silver market. The price is fixed in amber until the Chinese market reopens. And if the Western banks succeed in smashing the New York paper price down to $50 during the holiday week, if they manage to execute their manipulation with full effectiveness, they will have created something they cannot control. A $36 arbitrage gap. Shanghai at $86.70. New York at $50. A $36 spread between the physical reality of the East and the paper fiction of the West. And the moment that the Shanghai Futures Exchange rings its opening bell after the holiday, the second that Chinese markets come back online and traders see a $36 discount on Western silver, what happens next will not be described as a rally. It will not be described as a short squeeze. It will not be described as a technical breakout. It will be described as financial violence. Every arbitrage algorithm, every high-frequency trading system, every industrial procurement desk, every physical silver buyer across the entire Asian manufacturing complex will look at the Western price simultaneously. They will see a 40% discount to their local physical reality. And they will not just buy. They will not just accumulate. They will gorge. They will buy every contract, every bar, every deliverable ounce of registered silver that is not physically bolted to the vault floor. They will use the Western bank's own manipulation, the artificially suppressed paper price, as a subsidized entry point to drain the COMEX of every last ounce of registered inventory in a single trading session. And the Western banks, who spent the entire holiday week smashing the price lower to break retail sentiment, will watch in horror as their own attack becomes the instrument of their destruction. This is the trap that has been closing around them for months. And on February 27th, when the next major delivery window opens on the COMEX, when the contract holders step forward and demand physical metal at the prices they contracted for, the registered inventory will not be able to cover them. The math does not work. The silver is not there. And no accounting trick, no eligible silver chart, no force majeure argument, no mainstream media narrative will be able to hide it. But while New York is playing legal games with inventory classifications, the real collapse is not happening on a trading terminal. It is not happening in a Manhattan courtroom. It is not happening in a London price fixing session. It is happening on the ground, in the physical supply chain, in the manufacturing hubs, in the city that actually moves the metal that powers the modern world. It is happening in Shenzhen. Most people in the Western financial world have never heard of Shenzhen's Hubei district. It does not appear on the financial news channels. It does not get mentioned in the quarterly reports published by the major bullion banks. It does not feature in the glossy investment research distributed by Wall Street firms to their institutional clients. But to the global gold and silver industry, to the miners, the refiners, the fabricators, the jewelry manufacturers, the electronics procurement desks, the industrial buyers, Hubei is not just a district in a Chinese city, it is Mecca. 70% of China's entire gold and silver jewelry production flows through these few city blocks. Metal arrives in massive quantities from smelters and refineries across the country, changes hands dozens of times between wholesalers and fabricators, gets transformed into finished products, and ships out to markets across Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and North America. On a normal week, this district operates like a living, breathing organism. Cash changing hands every single second, physical metal moving through the supply chain in volumes that would stagger the imagination of the average Western retail investor. On a normal week, Shanghai is the most liquid physical silver market on Earth. This weekend, Shanghai is a ghost town. And it is not a ghost town because of the Lunar New Year holiday. The holiday does not start until later this week. Shanghai is silent this weekend because something has gone catastrophically, structurally, irreversibly wrong. Something that the Shenzhen Local Financial Supervision Bureau has deemed so serious, so systemically dangerous, that they have issued an emergency red alert notice. Something that has brought police cars and regulatory investigators into a district that normally runs entirely on handshakes and cash. The defaults have begun. Let me say that again, clearly. So there is absolutely no ambiguity about what is happening right now in the physical silver supply chain. The defaults have begun. Companies in Shanghai are failing to deliver metal they contracted to deliver. Buyers who paid deposits weeks ago are showing up to collect their silver and finding empty vaults. Factory owners who depend on physical silver to run their manufacturing operations are being told that the metal they already paid for does not exist. And the Shenzhen Local Financial Supervision Bureau, the regional government body responsible for financial market oversight, has stepped in with emergency powers, shutting down companies and freezing operations across the district. The news coming out of Shenzhen right now is chaotic and fragmented. Information is moving faster than anyone can verify. But the core facts are confirmed and they are devastating. And they expose with perfect clarity the exact same rot that is infecting the Western paper silver market, just stripped of the sophisticated financial language that obscures it in New York and London. One major trading platform, identified in local Chinese media reports as Jewel Rue, has completely imploded. This was not a back alley operation. This was not a small retail shop serving individual collectors. This was a significant, established player in the Shanghai physical silver market. A company with substantial client relationships, substantial deposit holdings, and a business model that was trusted by both small retail investors and serious industrial buyers. Their business model was called prefixed pricing, and it was, in essence, the same fraud that the Western bullion banks have been running on a global scale for 40 years, just executed at the retail level with less sophisticated packaging. Here's how it worked. The company approached investors, small factory owners, jewelry manufacturers, anyone who needed silver or wanted exposure to silver prices, and made them an attractive offer. Give us a small deposit, 10% of the total purchase value. In exchange, we will lock in today's price for you. You can take physical delivery later when you are ready, when your factory needs the metal, when your production schedule requires it. In the meantime, your price is guaranteed. It sounded brilliant. It was accessible. It allowed small manufacturers to hedge their raw material costs without tying up their entire working capital. It allowed retail investors to gain leveraged exposure to silver prices without paying the full spot price up front. It created a market for people who genuinely needed silver but could not afford to buy it all at once. What it actually was, underneath the attractive packaging, underneath the professional marketing, underneath the official-looking contracts, was an illegal, unregulated fractional reserve futures market. They were selling paper silver, they were collecting deposits, leveraging those deposits many times over, and betting that the silver price would remain stable enough that they could always source the physical metal later if anyone actually showed up demanding delivery. They were relying on the same assumption that every fractional reserve precious metals operation relies on, that not everyone will show up at the same time, that delivery demands will be spread out, that they will always have enough time to source metal in the open market before the next buyer comes knocking. And then the silver market moved. Silver ripped from $75 to $120 in a matter of weeks as the physical shortage became undeniable. Then the Western banks executed a brutal paper smash, driving the price back down to $75 in days. The volatility was extreme. The leverage blew up. Clients who had locked in prices at lower levels were now sitting on enormous paper profits, and they wanted their metal. Clients who had bought at higher levels during the spike were panicking and wanted to exit. Everyone arrived at the same moment, demanding the same thing: physical silver, real bars, actual metal. And when the grandmothers who had saved their retirement funds in prefixed silver contracts showed up at the Shanghai offices to collect what they were owed, when the small factory owners who needed silver to keep their production lines running arrived with their paperwork and their receipts and their contracts, they found the same thing: empty vaults. The silver was not there. It had never been there in the quantities promised. The company had taken the deposits, leveraged them into synthetic positions, collected fees, and operated on pure faith that the price would stay manageable and delivery demand would stay spread out. When both of those assumptions failed simultaneously, the entire structure collapsed in hours. This is not a Chinese problem. Do not make that mistake. Do not allow yourself the comfort of geographic distance. What happened in Hubei this weekend is not a story about regulatory failures in a developing market. It is a mirror. It is a perfect, precise, undeniable reflection of exactly what the COMEX has been running on a global scale, just without the legal veneer, without the regulatory capture, without the decades of institutional credibility that allows the Western version of this fraud to continue operating in plain sight. The COMEX sells paper silver that does not exist. The eligible silver on their charts is private property they cannot touch. The registered silver available for delivery is less than 3 weeks of global industrial demand. And the February 27th delivery window is approaching like a freight train. The shorts are trapped between two walls that are closing simultaneously. They cannot push the price lower without triggering the Shanghai arbitrage explosion. They cannot let the price rise without becoming insolvent on their short positions. They cannot use eligible silver because it is theft. They cannot declare force majeure because it is illegal. They are stuck, paralyzed, in the kill zone between $75 and $86.70. And China knows it. China has been buying silver at every price level for years. When silver was at $30, they bought. When it was at $50, they bought more. When it hit $70, analysts said Chinese demand would collapse because buyers were too price sensitive. Instead, China bought even more aggressively. Now, silver is at $86.70 in Shanghai, and China is buying at levels that are breaking the supply chain in real time. They are not buying for price. They are not buying for profit. They are buying for survival. They are buying because the people making decisions in Beijing and Shenzhen and Shanghai understand something that the retail investor in the West has not yet fully processed. Paper currency is dying. The monetary system built on decades of dollar dominance, fractional reserve banking, and synthetic commodity markets is fracturing at every seam. And the nations and institutions and individuals who understand this are converting paper claims into physical reality as fast as the supply chain will allow. So as we head into this holiday week, as the Western banks prepare their manipulation campaigns and the mainstream media prepares its reassuring narratives, here is what you must hold on to with absolute clarity. If you see silver drop to $65 in New York this week, do not panic. If it falls to $60, do not panic. If the paper price gets smashed all the way to $50 during the thin holiday liquidity, do not panic. Smile. Because you now understand what that chart is showing you. You now understand that the New York paper price is a number generated by algorithms and synthetic contracts in a closed loop that is increasingly disconnected from physical reality. You understand that the real price, the price that actually matters, the price that reflects the genuine supply and demand of the physical metal, is sleeping in Shanghai at $86.70. And when the dragon wakes up after the holiday, it is going to be very, very hungry. The eligible lie is the last defense of a system that is already lost. The defaults in Shenzhen are the first visible cracks in a dam that has been under impossible pressure for years. The 86.70 floor is the line that cannot be broken, the concrete foundation beneath the global silver market that no amount of paper selling can reach. The Western banks built their empire on the assumption that paper and physical were interchangeable, that a promise was as good as metal, that a warrant was the same as a bar. Shenzhen just proved them wrong. Shanghai just proved them wrong. The registered inventory just proved them wrong. And on February 27th, the delivery window will prove them wrong one final irreversible time. The vaults are not full, the market is not healthy, the system is not fine, but you, the person who understands the difference between registered and eligible, between a paper promise and physical property, between the fake price in New York and the real price in Shanghai, you are not the one who needs to be afraid. They are.